Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for.
Let me ask you this, looking ahead to this year. Obviously, the big story is AJ, but and I was curious, like, again, you being so new to college basketball at this time last year, we're recording here mid-May. You guys are about to go back on the road to look at 2026 and beyond. But what was like? Were you aware? Like, did you know the name AJ DYBANTSA before you got to campus? When did you become aware of who he was, and basically like, oh, I want that guy to be part of what we're doing going forward?
I didn't. I had no reason to really follow, the high school ranks. I barely even followed college when I was in the NBA. But, I'd gotten some rumblings about, Utah Prep, and they were trying to get this kid who was like the number one player, this and that. And then that coincided with me, getting involved with this opportunity. And, so when I first stepped foot on campus, it was during the playoffs. AJ, his parents were touring BYU as part of like learning about Utah Prep. So I flew back specifically to meet with them, and that's kind of where it all kicked off. And then realized that he had worked out with Kevin Durant. So I asked Kev about him when I got back to Minnesota, and so that's kind of where it all started. Sort of coming together. And the more I just talked with him, and I really just liked him as a young man, very likable kid. And we just kind of bonded over the NBA, and it just was like, man, this might work, for both sides. And I think I think he was feeling us out. I didn't even know what I was doing on the recruiting. I'm just trying to ask Dunson, like, hey, what should I do next type of thing. And but no, man, it was a really like organic process the way it all kind of played out, and just excited that he's here.
Damn, so that sounds like a intense first date. Like your buddy knows her, and you're like, yeah. What do I say? What is she? What I was gonna ask you a follow up on that. I seem to remember. I could be wrong on the exact timeline, but he took, I believe, 7 visits in 7 weeks, and so I'm just curious. You obviously are preparing for a season. You're doing all the things that you would do in October, November. How much are you paying attention to what he's doing? How much are you trying not to pay attention to it? Because obviously, if you get one of those officials, I mean, Ace, his dad kind of said from the beginning, we're going to cut the list and then everyone's going to have a fair shot from there. But like, how much were you, while he's taking all these other visits, kind of monitoring, or are you not monitoring? Are you trying not to get too invested? How does that all work? Yeah,
not monitoring it really much at all. I mean, part of that might just be my, like just my lack of, knowledge of how the whole recruiting thing worked and does work. I'm still continuing to learn, but we're just pretty locked in on what we're doing here, you know what I mean? And just we spent a lot of time, honestly, just prepping for his visit, the type of stuff we want to talk to him about. We have an unbelievable team here in terms of content creation, in terms of, graphics and there's a lot of resources here, and we were trying to really put some stuff together that, we felt like would separate us in terms of knowing that he was going on all these other visits, and what could we say that would kind of make us stand out, which we feel like we have a lot to offer. And, that was a fun process to kind of think through all that stuff.
So you got to get on a plane to go to the Combine, so we'll keep it quick to a couple more questions. But I was going to ask you, so the Final Four this year, I actually asked John Shire this about once he knew that he had Cooper Flagg, it felt like he was very intentional about how he built around Cooper Flagg. And I would be curious, the meetings that you guys had, or once AJ commits, first take, whatever, maybe you guys knew before, I don't know, but like what does then, because it's like a challenge, but it's a fun challenge of, we get this very small window with this very special talent. It's not to disrespect all the other talented guys that you have in the building, but I would assume that there was a very intentional process in terms of how you wanted to build around AJ's specific talent.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of discussion about that. Kind of continues to be as we can fill out the roster. Even though we're more, we got our heavy hitters accounted for, but we wanted, we felt like we kind of looked at it and said, how young do we want to be? How old do we want to be? And so we opted more for experience. We opted for, play style. we got guys that can, space the floor and knock threes down and can guard. Those were kind of the characteristics we were going out and looking for. Rob Wright, obviously, we weren't sure what the point guard situation was going to be with Yegor and even Dallin Hall. But once those guys made their decisions, and Rob was in the portal, that was something that kind of we felt like seamlessly fit in, and then surrounding those guys with the shooting. Obviously getting Richie back was huge. He's probably one of, if not the best shooters in the country, and then putting more shooting around that and trying to get a little bit more athletic as well and address some of the needs outside of AJ that where we kind of fell short of last year.
What was the process like with Richie in terms of just because you've said, I think you've said publicly, I think Richie Saunders is an NBA player, so obviously taking advantage of that opportunity this year versus next year or whatever. What was your guys' kind of communication like during the spring with that?
Yeah, I mean, I just told him that, for one, I think all this stuff is new to Richie, which is really exciting time, for him and his wife. And so I just told him, hey, look, man, whatever you end up doing, I'm going to support you 100%. I kind of gave him the feedback I was getting from, my people that I'm close with in the NBA. He got linked in with some advisors that were kind of helping him, and we sort of helped navigate that process for him as well. And then, just try to be there to answer questions that he might have. And, it's different. If this was, 4 or 5 years ago, he's probably at the combine right now. But he's in a good spot here. He's got some great opportunity. I think, playing alongside AJ, I think will help elevate his, exposure, number one, and game, number two. It's like when you have a year that he had, first team all league. I do think now you see AJ coming in, you're like, okay, how does this impact me? So we had a lot of conversations, and I drew a lot of comparisons to when I was with the Suns when we traded for Kevin Durant mid-season. I'll never forget the game. We were in Chicago shortly after, and Book ended up getting like 3 wide open catch and shoot threes. And after the game, he's like, dude, I can't remember the last time I got that many open shots. And it's, you play with really good players, and it opens the floor up, for a lot of other guys. And I think Richie's going to be a huge, beneficiary of that. But also because of his experience and what he did this year, he's going to be one of our leaders, obviously.
I think you got to run. So I did want to end on a little bit of a lighter note. I have noticed you guys do the coolest recruiting photo shoots ever. How much input? Like, where do the chains come from? Like, I was looking at, because, you're prepping for the show. You're trying to make sure you hit all the key bullet points. And then I see Rob Wright with sunglasses. I see Coach Young with sunglasses, wearing a chain. I don't know if you have the, what is the guy, Flavor Flav clock?
Yeah.
I don't know if you got that going on. But how much coordinating do you have with that, and how does that all come together?
Man, like I said, we have so many unbelievable people here, and we have so many departments that are just elite at what they do. So I'm just I walk in there, man, everything's set up, and I get to pick, what vibe we're gonna go with for this.
Oh, so you do pick?
Yeah, I like to change.
Sure, I do too. Yeah.
Alter ego, maybe something going on there. My kids make fun of me.
Oh, do they?
Oh yeah, for sure. Dad, that's not cool. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. But the chains are a good look. But man, we have a blast with those. It's cool actually when the parents get involved too.
Yeah.
And like it's a fun time. Yeah.
Well, listen, when you don't land AJ DYBANTSA, when you don't land Rob Wright, then you go back to your kids and say, okay, you might have some here. But now you're like, come on, man, I'm on fire. Leave me alone.